right, Sherif. So good to sit down with you today. You are in the Sunshine Province, and it looks like it could be like midday. But what time is it where you are right now, anyway?
5 o'clock, and I don't know if anyone has ever called Alberta the Sunshine Province. So I'm taking that one to the bank.
Listen, I read somewhere. I read somewhere that Alberta has the most sunlight in Canada, most sunlight hours in Canada. So
Calgary actually specifically has the most sunlight hours in Canada.
Well, there you go. And so I guess we could say Calgary is the center of the universe then for those Calgarians out there.
We're not gonna. This podcast goes far and wide.
Yes.
We're not going to offend anybody by saying that.
I love it. Yes. Good call. So Sherif Gemayel, Gemayel, and you are the founder and CEO of Trufla. And some people might know you. Can we talk about your previous company? And I'll let you talk about your origins from Sharp Insurance.
Absolutely.
So some really cool stuff going on in the industry right now. Some big news concerning your company and some recent changes you've made. So I'm going to let you talk about that. Before we get into the business side, let's talk about what do we do when we're not sitting in the office? Like what's your passion, and what are your hobbies? What do you like doing when you've got time on your hands? Are you a reader? Are you a runner?
Is this based on my personal profile or what actually? No, I'm kidding. No, you know what? I especially after COVID, I've kind of realized my newfound passion. COVID, the sale of the business, whatnot. I spend a lot of time with my family, which I never really got to do before. So, first and foremost, I love spending time with my family, my kids. But when they're not around, I love playing video games. I'm a gamer. I love playing video games. And then when I'm not gaming, I'm trying to pretend like I was still a broker and get good at golf. I really love golf. I'm so good at it digitally, but I suck at it in every other way. And I'm trying to get good at it. So I'm gonna. That's how I'm going to be spending a lot of my summers golf. I'm not working golf.
If you figure that out, let me know. Because
I don't have a hope.
I've been trying to crack that nut too.
Yeah, I don't have a hope, but it's all good.
Those are cool things to keep you busy. And what would be nice if when the things that you love doing in your spare time, when you can blend them together. So, my kids like gaming too. So to be able to do that with them, or maybe if you got one of your kids is a golfer, or someone else in your family, that's not a bad way to share your time together when you can share those hobbies and those passions. So that's pretty cool. And
I may have spent some time with my kids playing Just Dance on Nintendo Switch. I'm actually showing them up in some areas. So
okay,
they're starting to realize their dad is not just old school. I keep up with them with some of the dance moves.
So. Well, I was going to ask if you pulled the cardboard out and if you're doing any backspins or anything like that, or
no, based on my body type and size doesn't quite allow for that. And then you add the age in there, I'll probably break really easy. But I can put on a good show to a point.
That's good. And you know what? That's the key when you hit the 40 plus range. Know your limits. I'm not saying you're 40 plus, but I had that humbling experience of showing my children what a bunny hop was on a bike. I didn't quite land it. I think you're supposed to land on the tires, and I landed on my hip. So yeah, but anyway, they had a laugh. I had an Advil. So yeah.
And yes, I am part of the 40 club. I was vaccinated early because I was part of the 40 club. I actually just turned 40 a year ago. So
good for you.
Just snuck in.
Nice. Yeah, we're in the same club. So lots to talk about today. Let's start with what you would consider the beginning, because I know you haven't been in insurance your entire life. So, over to you to talk about the story of Trufla and, just your origins and how you got to where you are now. Why don't you just tell us about that?
So I started, Trufla was born out of Sharp Insurance. And I started Sharp in 2009. So I was 29 years old when we started Sharp, and I didn't come from the insurance industry previously. So my first, kind of kick of the can was starting Sharp, and it was actually very, very serendipitous. I was just telling some people internally the story. So I had a business. My first business. I was 22 years old. Didn't end up well. I actually went bankrupt with my first business. I was still in university at the time, and that took me out to Winnipeg. And I ended up meeting my wife. Kind of started a career in sales there, which brought me back to Calgary. And my business partner, who I started my first business with, he was actually, after we lost our business, he started in the insurance industry. He started as a commercial underwriter with Intact, what was then ING, now Intact, and then moved to the brokerage side of the world. So one day I met with him, and I'm sitting in his office. I was working oil and gas sales at the time. And I'm sitting in his office, and I asked him, and I said, so how do you get clients? Like, how do you find new business? He said, well, we kind of wait for the phone to ring. And as a sales guy, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what you just said. I don't understand the words that just came out of your mouth. So I said, we're going to do a little experiment. So I said, you grab your manager, you grab a phone book, and I'm going to show you what you should do to sell. And so he grabs the phone book and his manager, and I said, pick any business in the phone book. And he ended up landing on a business in Calgary. It was a paving company. And I cold called it. And I ended up serendipitously talking to the controller, and I got him an appointment. And 2 months later, he ends up writing the account, and it was the largest account that the brokerage had ever written. It's a really large account. So I was like, how hard can this insurance thing be? I mean,
exactly.
I used to sell mail machines in my younger years. Everybody needs insurance. Can't be that hard. Mm-hmm. So he was actually looking to buy into the brokerage at the time. I convinced him not to. And I said, let's start a brokerage from scratch. I'll be the sales guy. You're like the entourage. You do all the insurance stuff. And he couldn't help me get a contract at the time because he didn't want to lose the opportunity of buying into the brokerage. He didn't want the broker owner to find out. So I put a business plan together, and I literally walked into Intact's office here in downtown Calgary, went to the receptionist with a business plan in hand and said, hi, I'd like to talk to someone about selling your product. And she said, are you a broker? I said, no, but I'm going to be. And she must have thought I was on crack, but it was good enough to, a VP happened to walk by. She called this VP over, and this VP must have just entertained me just out of, curiosity. Who is this kook? And so she said, is that your business plan? I said, yeah, here's my business plan. She said, this just might work. It had nothing to do with digital. It was very traditional. We were going to focus on certain ethnic communities. My background is Arabic. His background is East Indian. We're going to focus on that community. And she said, well, today's your lucky day. I'm head of the Diversity Council, and we want to grow in ethnic communities. And she said, do you have your license? I said, of course I do. And I pulled out my driver's license. She said, no, your insurance license. I'm like, oh, you have to be licensed to sell insurance. She's like,
what's that?
She's like, I'll tell you what, you get your license and we'll give you a contract. I was like, okay. So 2 weeks later, I actually went and wrote my license, and I got my license and went back and said, here's my license. She said, we're going to give you a contract. So we ended up getting a contract, and we were on one market shop. And that's how Sharp kind of started. And about a year in, so when she gave us the contract, she said, well, you need to, there's a minimum commitment you have to write in your first year. And she's like, it's $500,000. It's like,
yeah,
piece of cake, no big deal. What do I know, right? How hard can that be? And we ended up our first year writing over $1 million in our first year of business, all organic. So we were kind of onto something. And then towards the end of the first year, we're celebrating, I'm having beers with my partner, and we thought, this was now 2010. We thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a mobile app for our customers? At the time, the iPhone 3 had just come out. Everybody and their dog was building a mobile app just because it was the cool thing to do. So we hired a couple of university students that built a mobile app for us. And what we didn't realize at the time was it was the first mobile app of its kind for any broker or agent in North America. Like, it was only the big it was only actually Progressive and Geico at the time that had any kind of a mobile app.
Incredible.
So we kind of promoted this, and we started getting attention from other brokerages that were like, hey, that's kind of cool. Could we have that too? And in 2014, we formalized a company called Sharp Mobile Technology, which then later became Trufla Technology. So that was kind of the start of it. It was very serendipitous how it all happened. And kind of fast forward 6-7 years, here we are.
You know what I love about your story is that you came in from the outside knowing nothing about the business, but you saw a need that was being underserviced in a better way of doing things, and you figured it out. And I hope there's people eventually that listen to this podcast that are from outside of the industry that know that the doors are open. This isn't for insiders only. And that's part of the reason why I started InsurTech Canada, because, and I'm not against, and I often say this, it's like criticizing my own family because I've been part of this family 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm not against innovation from within. And there's a lot of smart, brilliant minds within the industry, but we need more talent to come into this industry and disrupt ourselves. And that disruption starts a whole cycle of innovation. It's just funny, your phone book story, and the power of picking up the phone and reaching out, because the clients, most of your current policyholders, the ones that are thrilled with their service, don't get out of bed in the morning saying, "Gee, I really feel like buying insurance today." You gotta go to them, right?
I say that all the time. Even people in the insurance industry, I don't think anybody has ever had the conversation of, honey, it's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Let's get a coffee. Let's get some breakfast. Let's shop our insurance today. Like, it's a good day for insurance. Said nobody ever, right?
That's
like
right.
We sell a product that nobody wants to buy.
Exactly.
That's actually part of the challenge of what we do, even from a technology perspective. How do you get someone to want to buy something that they don't want to buy? They're forced to buy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
In most cases. So.
And the other thing, Sherif, is I want to pick up on is a big part of this podcast is featuring founders. Like, we are very focused on founders, and I think that was a gap in the ecosystem, and so we want to profile as many founders as possible. I'm actually glad that you shared that your first kick at the can was not a success, or that ended up in a bankruptcy. This is before you got into insurance. Because that's a reality that a lot of founders need to face, and I don't think there's ever anything lost, even in a situation like that. You may lose capital and a bit of your dignity, and I'm sure other things, but at the end of the day, it's made you a stronger, successful founder of 2 subsequent companies.
Yeah. I mean, I look back now and I think if I didn't lose what I lost before, and I didn't have those learnings, there was no way we could have been successful. Like, I almost feel like you don't earn your stripes or your badge until you've been really knocked down hard. Like, you don't necessarily have to go bankrupt,
right?
But every founder has to get knocked down hard some way, or else you just think it's too easy. And it's not. It's a grind. Like, it's tough.
Yeah. And just when you hit that new peak, then there's a new grind on the horizon, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's that saying? Calm waters don't make a good sailor. Right. And that's, you either have a stomach for that or you don't.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was, so when you first came up with the mobile app concept, which was kind of like your first step into the digital piece. You had a year of success. You doubled the target that you were given by your first market. And now you're starting to think, how can I take my business to the next level? Were you, before Trufla was even a thought in your mind and you were just thinking mobile app, were you thinking, I'm going to be developing the next innovation for the industry? Or was this more born out of necessity to make your business better?
No, it was, so I'd say halfway into our first year, not even halfway, it was probably 3 or 4 months into our first year. So remember, the original plan that we were going to focus on these ethnic communities, and we're going to go kind of down that road. And then I had a friend of mine who started up his own web dev company. And so we didn't have a website at the time. This is probably 3 or 4 months after we started. We didn't have a website at the time. And I said to him, listen, tell you what, we need a website for the brokerage, right? Like a brochure type website. Mm-hmm. And I said, but I have no money. Like we've got nothing. We're a little startup.
Yeah.
So why don't you build the website for us? And in the evenings, I'll do sales for you I was bartering.
Yeah.
He said, okay. So I did that for 3 or 4 months, where I was doing kind of sales for him and, driving opportunities. And he built our website. And around that same time, I started reading about Google and Google Places. Like they hadn't formalized kind of Google business listings yet, but you could create a listing for a website for your business. So I looked into it and I thought, I'm going to give this a try. And so one night I'm playing around and I stuffed it with keywords and whatever. And a few days later, I'm in an insurance 101 course at Intact. Now I'm learning about insurance more and more. And my business partner calls in the middle of the course and I didn't pick up. And he calls again and I didn't pick up. He calls again. I'm like, okay, something's wrong. Yeah. So I step out of the course and I pick up the phone and he says, the phone won't stop ringing. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, whatever you did online, it won't stop ringing. Make it stop.
Oh my gosh.
Like, well, no, I can't I'm not going to make it stop.
Why would I do that?
Handle whatever you can handle, right? So I was like, oh, there's something in this digital world. Nobody was really playing in that space, right? So I was like, there might be something digital here. And that's when I said to him, okay, you build my site, I'll do all that. And we started driving a lot of leads. 4 months into the business, and we wrote $100,000 in premium in 1 month, which is at the time was unheard of.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh, there might be something here with this digital stuff. But the whole mobile phone idea was kind of like, well, this is kind of just novelty. This may be cool. But we did it for us, and then people started being interested in it. Our clients started being interested in it. Like, hey, this is kind of cool. And it had no data in it. It was a static app. It had some FAQs, call your broker. But there was kind of something here. So over the years, we thought, okay, this is a competitive advantage. We started building data into it, and we found a data source. We get our policies in there and whatnot. And then it just kind of took off from there. But I mean, again, serendipity. It was kind of like little pieces that kind of came together.
But you know what, though? This is, I often say this because, sometimes you go down a path out of instinct and, you can have the best business plan in the world, but if you're not listening to what the market is telling you, you're in for a rude awakening. And the market told you instantaneously, even though you were playing around, you've tapped into something here. So that was like the first sign. Like, okay, proof point number one. Our phone's ringing off the hook. 100,000 in net new premium written in 1 month, which was unprecedented at the time. So that tells you, okay, you're onto something. Listen to the market. So beyond that, though, at what point did you have that light bulb moment where you're like, I'm solving, other than just creating more market share for my own company, my own brokerage, at what point did you realize I'm solving a problem for the industry that no one else is addressing right now?
It was so after that, by a few months,
Mhm.
That's when it really hit me. And funny enough, we were members of, our local, association. And I sent an email at the time to the president of the local association saying, listen, I think brokers need to focus more on this digital world. Here's, I'm a nobody. We're kind of this little brokerage, but here's some interesting things we've done. We're starting to get attention from markets and whatnot. And we were just kind of sloughed off, it wasn't like, no, we don't really, no, that's not where. And that's when I was like, man, if they're pushing back that hard, we might be onto something here. Like everything is going to go digital.
Yeah.
Everything is going to go digital. And so I just kind of latched onto it and I went from there.
So, and that's, it's my interactions with the industry even today. And I don't want to beat up on brokers because I'm actually a big fan of brokers, and I know you are. But there's still a lot of brokers out there, and they don't even have to be old school. Some of them are younger, next gen brokers. But when you talk digital, some of them are still not seeing the value. That's what I've experienced or encountered, and that's a challenge to get their attention. So what I'm leading to with my question is, would you say, going into Trufla and what Trufla does? 'Cause I really want you to kind of unpack what is Trufla. If I'm a broker listening to this, why should I continue listening or go to the site? Is it just for newer companies like Sharp in the early days that are looking to scale and grow? Or what about the other camp of brokers that have market share, doing pretty well, but don't have a retention strategy to stay relevant? Is it for both, or would you say is it for one or the other?
For sure, it's for both.
Okay.
I'm a very big believer. So a lot of people talk about the disintermediation, in the industry,
Yeah.
and that the disintermediation is going to happen at the broker level.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't believe that at all. I actually believe so I wrote an article a couple of years ago called, that was titled, Dear Broker, You're More Like Amazon Than You Think. And it was comparing insurance brokers to big tech companies. And at first blush, you think, well, how can you compare an insurance brokerage to a big technology firm like Amazon, Google, Uber? And you actually can. So if you look at insurance brokers as compared to these companies, you realize that these big tech companies are nothing more than distributors. None of them are manufacturers of anything.
Mm.
Amazon doesn't build any of the products that they distribute. Google doesn't build any of the websites that they push. Uber doesn't build or own any of the cars that they distribute. Airbnb, kind of same thing. Facebook doesn't own or curate any of the content. It's all so they are just mass distributors of it. Comparison number one. Comparison number two. These sites all have a choice. If you went to Google and went to, typed in a search query and only got the response from Wikipedia, it was going to fail. If you went to Amazon and looked for a type of USB cable and only got one type, you were going to fail. If you were Airbnb and all you offered was one bedroom apartments, or your
Right.
Uber only offered Uber X, you were going to fail. You had to cater to the masses by offering choice, which brokers do. The third one, which is where brokers lacked, was they all distribute efficiently en masse using digital and, more importantly, using data.
Mm.
So they use data to distribute, data and digital means to distribute. That's where brokers can compare. So whether you're a small brokerage, a startup, or whether you're a large brokerage, a la, Hub, Aon, Marsh, whoever, no, you've got to be digital. You have to have digital means to distribute en masse. And I am very bullish on brokers that in the long run, brokers are going to win the game. I cannot see a world where a direct writer wins the game because it's too complex, it's too competitive, and people don't trust insurance. They don't want to buy the product that they don't trust. So they're not only going to go to one source to get one option to buy it. They're going to go to multiple. And if brokers do it right and offer multiple choices in one place, they're going to end up winning the long game. That's my bet, and that's what Trufla is betting on.
I think that's a really strong hypothesis. Like, I think that that really carries a lot of weight. When you think about, I think anybody who's, watching business, it doesn't matter what the industry it is, there's, in the last 5 to 10 years, there's always comparisons to Amazon, Google, Facebook, Airbnb experience. Just from an experience standpoint, that has reset consumer expectations for how they want to interact with whatever product or service they're buying. And so we know that they've set a tone there. And that's part of the reason why there's this massive catch up happening in the fintech and insurtech space. And financial, the traditional banking and that, is even further ahead of insurance. Insurance is really lagging. And so I think you're bang on, because the distribution pieces, the choice, the digital, those things all make a lot of sense. But what's interesting is you're the first person I've heard present it that way. And I hope brokers are listening, because there's, in Canada, there's over 25,000 brokers. And that's a strong force. Now let's get into that. Now that we've kind of set that up, let's get into like the meat and potatoes. Like, what is it that Trufla does, other than being mistaken with like a truffle company?
Truffle. So Trufla's mandate is to digitize the entire broker's world. So basically, we look at the entire the life cycle of brokerages, everything from acquiring to kind of order fulfillment in the middle, and then servicing at the outset. A lot of people ask us often if we're, are you guys building the next BMS? We absolutely are not.
Right.
BMSs have their place. We're actually building tools that surround the BMS that enhances the broker's capabilities of kind of seeing their client from beginning, from how they acquire and kind of walk that client through to fulfilling the order in the middle and managing the lead and certain niche products, and then servicing their client on the back end using the mobile app and other things. So we're basically digitizing the kind of that insurance policy life cycle for an insurance brokerage.
And so, like, the different stages of the purchasing journey, the renewal journey, or just the client journey in general, you have the BMS that sits within the business, the broker management system, but this is almost the inputs that feed into the BMS. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly
digital inputs. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of look at your BMS as your policy management system in the center, and we build all our tools around it to, again, enhance the experience on the front end when you're acquiring that customer, enhance the experience kind of in the middle when that customer comes in, and enhance that experience at the end when you're servicing your client.
Very cool. Okay, so, and like, what would you say is the ideal target broker persona that you look at them and you go, you need Trufla, you need to be a believer, and I'm going to convert you? What does that broker look like?
Anybody that is named a broker.
Really?
Any brokerage. Doesn't matter how small or big you are.
What if I have a great website? I don't need you. I got an awesome website.
Great. You've got a great website. You've got tools that can quote, that combine, that can do everything. But if nobody can find your site online, you still don't exist.
Right.
Doesn't matter how good your website is. Doesn't matter if you don't know how to drive an opportunity to your site, you're dead. And then when that opportunity comes in, how are you managing that opportunity? Because if you can't manage it within a certain time frame, you've lost that client. You've spent all this money bringing the client in and you didn't manage it properly, they're gone. And then when you've got that client, if you haven't managed them a certain way, they're going to leave you on the back end. So it doesn't matter your size.
Yeah.
A broker is the same whether you're small or big. There's exact same process along the way. You've got to acquire that client. You've got to manage that client. You've got to service that client.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are.
And I'm going to bring this up. So you're going to help me. So now I'm listening. I'm a broker and I'm listening, going, okay, this guy's going to help me increase my web presence, my profile, maybe my ranking on in Google, et cetera, and drive more business to my door. Checkbox. There's the D word though. Once you have all the D word being data, what are you doing with all that data now that you've got, you've gained 5% market share, you have all of these new prospects in your pipeline and your sales funnel is filling up. Does Trufla help with that aspect? How do I analyze and segment all of these people? What do I do with this business? Do you help me with that? If I'm a broker?
Yeah, we do. Data is at the core of everything that we do, because and part of the challenge that we've found in the brokerage world is that, again, if you're a small brokerage or a big brokerage, you don't have enough data to have that big of an impact. So with a lot of the tools that we've had or that we've built along the way, we actually we anonymize and aggregate that data and extract intelligence out of that data for the benefit of all brokers, to give them the power of that data to be able to attract a client better, sell a client better, service a client better, retain a client better, all along the way. Data is at the core of everything that we do. Because remember, we were talking earlier when you were trying to compare brokers to these big tech companies, the big differentiator was data. They use data to sell better, to create a better experience and all that. It's really easy to talk about we want to create an Amazon type experience and we want to create an Uber and a Google type experience. Well, great, but you have to have data. You got to have all the other points to be able to do that. It's not just about creating a site that can sell a policy. That's not the Google experience. The Google experience is, as I'm typing in my search query, Google knows exactly what I'm typing and it fills it for me. And the result, if it's not right, nobody ever thinks Google is wrong. They think they typed the query wrong into Google. So they retype their search query, because Google can't be wrong, because they have all the data. Amazon knows when you buy this, people like you will also buy this, this, and this. That's how, it's using data to power all of that.
And so helping that broker to create meaningful insights, create a client profile, so that I can understand even the psychology of that client and what decisions they need to make, and based on their stage of life, based on what they own, what they're buying, what they're acquiring.
I tell our people internally, there's really only two things we're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
You can break it down into two things and two things only.
I love that.
We help brokers grow their business and retain their business. Everything in a brokerage operation fits in one of those two buckets. That's it. And that's why Trufla is so different than other tech companies, because we were born out of a brokerage. We understand brokerage operations and exactly what a brokerage needs intimately. And it doesn't matter what a brokerage does, it fits in one of two buckets. You're either growing your business or fighting to retain your business. And everything we've built fits into one of those two buckets. That's it. Well
said. So Trufla is not a new company. You launched it in 2014. Well, you branded it Trufla 2014.
Yeah.
You recently sold Sharp Insurance.
Yeah.
So you're all in, laser focused on Trufla. Let's talk about the stage of the company. Are you raising funds? Are you going through a transformation? Are you launching a new product? The floor is yours.
Not raising funds right now. I mean, we're good on the fund side. Transformation, absolutely. We've kind of reached a stage where we deal with a couple hundred brokerages across the country, and we need to. You get to a certain critical mass where it's not just about building, the new shiny thing, but you got to be able to support those businesses and having them actually have value into what what they've bought from you. So they've got to realize real tangible value. Again, they're either growing or retaining their business, but they're seeing a net revenue increase either through one of those two, through the tools. We're making some pretty big changes. We do have some really cool tools that we are launching in short order. One of them in particular is this is obviously a biased opinion, but it is, I think it's industry cutting. It's something that never been done in the insurance industry here. And it's going to give it actually focuses more on the retention side of the world. And it's going to give brokers the ability to really, basically, we're going to be able to identify to a brokerage exactly who in their book is at risk of being lost, who in their book they've got room to either increase cover or sell more products comfortably, and who in their brokerage is actually sitting really good as compared to the market. So just giving them that ability to take their retention to a whole different place. That's a really exciting one. We've got a few things, like we've announced some of these things that are, we held our Amplify conference earlier in the year, which we had attended by almost, I think it was over 700, maybe close to 750 brokers, which we're pretty happy with. But we've got some really interesting stuff that's all data focused.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like even just the segmentation piece, and I haven't walked as many miles in those shoes as you have, but I ran for a direct writer, 2 locations, and we were selling everything from life and health to home, auto, travel. And so, product wasn't an issue, obviously choice, because it was a single brand. Where I'm going with that is, despite having the best CRM in the world and, having a parent company with lots of intel, there was a lack of understanding around, okay, how do I, and it's a terrible term, but one piff to another. And it's just a bunch of piff in a bucket. And it's, how many of these products did you sell this month? How many are you going to sell next month? And there's so much focus on bringing in new business. I think the line of sight into the renewal cycle, other than just, I hope everybody renews and no one cancels on me. All those lost opportunities, from my experience, personal experience, that mindset doesn't exist. Even if they want to be able to segment their clients, like who needs a top up, who's good, and who is probably, going to, ruin my loss ratios and my relationships with my markets potentially. Being able to segment that and have that information pushed to a broker, I think is invaluable. And I'm sure there's lots of brokers that don't even know that that's possible. So that on its own, I think, is enough to warrants looking into Trufla.
Fun fact that most brokers don't even know: if you increase your retention by 4 to 5% in your brokerage, you double the profitability of your brokerage, and that's pure mathematics. So again, the way we think about things at Trufla, it's not just about the cool, shiny thing, quote, bind, issue, fancy chat bots or whatever. Can we increase revenue and can we increase profitability? Can we bring more clients in? Can we keep them in the brokerage? Nobody's doing this. It's not a not-for-profit organization. Brokerages are there to win, to make money, to grow, to realize their potential. And that's what we're trying to do. Like it's going right to the core.
And this sounds very holistic to me, because we know in any business there's different stats out there, but at least 3 times more expensive to acquire new customers.
Sure.
So you always need to have some organic growth, but if your retention is your strategy is not there, or you're not keeping your eye on that, that's where the profitability is going to take a hit, even if you're growing your top line sales number. So as far as challenges are concerned, because we all face rocky roads, what would you say is, and it might not be a challenge you faced yet with Trufla, it could be the biggest challenge ahead, or it could be a challenge you had to overcome. And this is more for maybe folks listening, other founders out there listening, people that want to be the next Sherif and break into the insurance industry, be the next success story. What's the biggest challenge you've faced on your Trufla journey?
Complacency.
Interesting.
Complacency in the industry. A lot of big talk, great talk, lots of buzzwords, lots of, and I will say this, lots of verbal diarrhea around buzzwords. But at the end of the day, it's really challenging to make. I believe brokerages are probably one of the greatest businesses in the history of mankind. And a gentleman that I heard present, his name is John Wepler from Marshberry in the US. He did a presentation on this. He had this slide that was, about, brokerage as being the greatest industry mankind has ever seen, which is why there's so much money being poured into insurance brokerages, kind of venture capital, not VC, but private equity money that's being poured into insurance brokerages, and why you're starting to see these mega brokerages, because they're just such a remarkable business. You're in an industry that's got a high barrier of entry, that is a mandatory buy of a product, that like it goes on and on and on. And so to convince someone that what they've done could be affected, is going to be affected over the years when they're making so much money, is tough. Like it's tough. That's where you start getting into that like, why do I have to change? Well, because you might die later down the road. Yeah, but I'm not dying now. Maybe when I start dying, I'll think about it. It's definitely turning the corner. The corner is like, people are turning the corner. And there's starting to be change. But it's getting over the big fancy buzzwords and actually executing and getting things done. That's the biggest challenge we faced with brokerages. Because again, I am very bullish. And I don't know if brokers themselves are as bullish as we are on their own success. I believe brokers are going to win the long game. They've just never been playing on the same playing field.
I think a lot of brokers are bullish, and I think a lot are skeptical and really don't know. I asked a recent broker I was talking to, who went out on their own and started their own firm within the last 5 years, if they would recommend doing that to anybody who was thinking about jumping in, like you did in 2009. They said, hell no. But they're rock stars. They're doing well, but they're not really innovating. So they've got that mentality. They're stuck in the pit. The pit's working for them right now, but I don't think they know what they're going to do in 5 years or 10 years from now, other than maybe an exit. Would you recommend, especially with something like Trufla out there, would you do, if there's a young Sherif out there saying, I don't know anything about the insurance industry, it can't be that hard, I'm going to jump in and see if I can take a crack at this, and they pull out their driver's license thinking it's not that hard. What advice would you give to someone who's contemplating that?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, so yes, because I'm a very big believer in the entrepreneurial spirit and, bringing people in. No, because what I've learned is in the last few years, the market has really changed a lot. Mm-hmm. There's lots of factors that have changed, even underwriting behaviors. Carriers aren't quite as open to growing the way they were. Yeah. And it really is starting to be about who you know more rather than what you know. Mm-hmm. And what you're capable of. And it is getting harder to get in. Now, if you can, a big part of my advice is get in somewhere and start building that experience and then branch out.
Right.
I'm the first to admit, like it was, the time that I started was a lot different than now. Like carriers were a lot different. They want to grow, they'll grow at any cost and whatever. Now it's a little bit different. That doesn't mean it's not going to come back. I think that's just kind of the here and now, what we're dealing with, current conditions. But no, I mean, I promote people coming into this industry often.
Yeah.
Great industry.
And I would say your story is a bit of an anomaly, hard to replicate. And sometimes that's a little bit of timing on your side. Obviously, I don't take away from the work ethic and the drive and the relentless attitude that you had towards it. I'm sure those things, and you had business experience coming into this as well. We are in a hard market right now, and I would agree with you. You know, being 2 decades in the industry myself, a lot has changed. But you know what? I'm sure the generations before us would have said the same thing.
I agree. I agree.
Right?
That's why I was kind of like, yes, no.
Yeah.
Just because I also come in from, I didn't have this lens before, right? So sometimes what you don't know, you just don't know. So I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But I also, I kind of look back at a bunch of the steps and I was like, if any one of those things that, like, it was serendipity, like, any one of those things doesn't happen, we're not having this conversation today.
Well, you're very humble and you're very modest, and I'm sure there was more than just serendipity on your side. But and your track record speaks for itself. What do you want Trufla to be known for, Sherif? Like, and when I ask this question, I ask everybody this question. It's from a customer standpoint. Forget about the headlines and all the shiny objects, because everyone gets caught up in that, and we talked about that offline. What do you want your customers to say about Trufla?
The Trufla is the technology and the power that that is behind distribution of insurance through brokers. That is what we want. Like we're very bullish on it. Trufla we want to be the power behind distribution of insurance through brokers, and we want to be the power behind, the next insurtechs, whatever that, whatever they are, I think we can bring a lot to the table to help power the next generation of insurtechs, whether they're born out of brokerages or whatever. That's what we want to be known for.
Really cool. Does that extend beyond Canada, you think?
It does, and it currently does already.
Okay. Well, we didn't talk about that yet. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've kind of we've had some really interesting opportunities overseas. So Trufla right now is we're just over 100 employees. So we've got about 30 employees in Canada, and we have about 70 employees in our office in Cairo, Egypt. And it's not an outsourced office. It's our own team. We have our own office. We've got HR, accounting, the whole 9 yards there. And so we've got some pretty unique opportunities that have presented themselves in other countries around the world. So the reality is insurance is insurance. No matter where it is. There's an element of underwriting and fulfillment, and you still got to get your clients and service them and the renewals and whatnot. So we've got some pretty interesting opportunities.
So I can't resist, Sherif. Do you mean to tell me, and correct me if I got any of this wrong, the idea of Trufla was born in Canada, grew up in Canada, funded in Canada, am I right so far? And then now you've jumped into another market. So now it's an international company, and you didn't have to go to the States? Come on, that never happens. If you have to go to the States to be a success. I'm being facetious, obviously, but that is a mindset. And look, I'm the first to admit, as proud as I am to be a Canadian, they're the largest economy in the world. We're lucky to have the Americans as our neighbors and friends. And we should never discount how our success is in a lot of ways because of their success. However, it doesn't mean we can't build commercially viable global success stories from Canada and be in other markets without going down to the States to get funding and to get scale and all those things and talent, because there's a brain drain going south as well. And that was another reason we started InsurTech Canada, was to dispel that myth that everything has to be about going south if you want to make it.
No, we have not gone south. We have not raised capital. We bootstrapped the whole thing. We did it all ourselves. The next round of funding came from me personally. I'm very heavily invested in
Hats
Trufla.
off. Yeah.
And what we kind of realized about the state, make no mistake, we looked at it. But you learn very quickly, and especially because I come from the insurance industry, so I know all the ins and outs. When you look at the US, you're not looking at one country.
Yeah.
You're looking at 50 countries.
Well said.
Each state is a separate jurisdiction, which is with its own set of rules and its own regulatory regime. And to satisfy 50 countries, no. Okay, let's get ourselves really strong elsewhere and then come and take a big bite out of there. Because even in the US, they haven't solved the problem of digitization in the insurance space. It is so fractured. There's no consistency of data. There's no one technology provider that's kind of ruling the world. And even when you look at the big insurtech, so you look at let's take two specifically.
Mm-hmm.
You take Google. Google started in the US. They bought a brokerage in San Francisco in 2015. It was March 2015. Exactly 1 year later to the day, they shut it down. Why? Because even Google learned it's not a straight line, and it didn't work for them. Amazon, when they entered in the insurance space, they did not enter in the US. They entered in India. They played in a different sandbox first, even though they're a US company that's dominated the world, starting in the US in the distribution space. They didn't start in the US. They started internationally first.
Well said. And I think a lot of Canadians can fall into innocently the trap of thinking because Canada, we have differences between provinces too, but not as pronounced. And we are much more consolidated as an industry in Canada. And we're a country of 5 banks call the shots. We have 10 insurance companies that own 85% of the P&C market at least. Life and health's not much different. We're a country of monopolies, really, or oligopolies, and we also have this kind of big government mentality, look after me from cradle to grave. The point I'm trying to get to is, you have our population base of just under 40 million, and it's easy to think that I'll go in because I'm a success in Canada and I'll be able to replicate that in the US. And there's a reason why even American companies that originate in the US only focus on one part of the US, Midwest only or Southwest only, or so that's a reality for a reason. And I think another founder I talked to a few interviews ago talked about it was a year and a half just to get licensed in every state before they could really crack that nut. And that's a lot of capital and time and energy burnt before you've even generated any revenue. So a lot to think about and consider before making that jump. So I love that you're a direct example of someone who went multi-market, took a Canadian success, brought it to another market, but it was somewhere else in the world, and you're making it work. So that's fantastic. This is exactly the reason why Insurtech Canada exists. This is part of how we advance the cause for innovation in insurance. So, final thoughts, just to wrap up. Where do we find you if people want to learn more about Trufla?
Online, best way to find us. Trufla.com, our website. You can find us all over LinkedIn, of course. Trufla, you can find me all over LinkedIn. Those are the two best ways, and you won't have a hard time finding us.
And maybe wandering around in downtown Calgary, right?
As much as we might be a little bit locked down these days, so maybe not so much, but normally, yes, that's exactly right. Or at a local tequila shop somewhere, or that's our drink of choice at Trufla. We're tequila drinkers here. So
it's low calorie, right?
It's low calorie, yeah.
That's why The Rock drinks it, right? It's guilt-free. Yeah.
As you can clearly see, I'm the poster boy of counting calories right here.
Yeah.
So
well, there's a lot of similarities between you and The Rock. So it was great sitting down with you today, Sherif. And an hour blew by like it was nothing. I feel like we're just getting warmed up here. So I really look forward to the follow up. Exciting things on the horizon for Trufla. Definitely one to watch, but don't sit on the sidelines. Reach out, and I'm with you. I'm bullish on the brokers. Even in the digital world, I think the brokers have a strong, strong place in this industry. So thanks for doing what you do and for sitting down with
Thank
me
you for
today.
having me. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.